Today is November 22nd, 2024. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Willie Gene Coats in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Coats, C-O-A-T-S.
C-O-A-T-S. Ma'am, where were you born?
Scipio, Oklahoma.
Scipio.
Scipio, S-C-I-P-I-O, down by McAllister.
When's your birthday?
2/8/27.
Who is your father?
George Henry Canfield.
And your mother?
Tina Bell Canfield.
What was her maiden name?
Gimlin. G-I-M-L-I-N.
Okay. Did you go through school in Scipio?
Did I do what?
Did you go through school in Scipio?
No. From Scipio, my family moved on a farm at Pittsburgh, right there by McAllister.
Yes.
And I can remember living at Pittsburgh about 3 years old. And that's when my family moved to Salina, Oklahoma. That's 9 miles east of Pryor.
Yes.
And that's where I start remembering things, you know, in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school at a one-room schoolhouse until I was in the 4th grade.
What was the name of the school?
And the school's name was Littleborough. And after, when I was in the 4th grade, I started going to school at Salina. And I guess they didn't have a teacher for the Littleborough anymore. I don't know. But anyhow, I started school at Salina. And there I remained until I graduated out of high school.
What year?
In 1944. And my family moved from out in the country to town in Salina when I was in still the 4th or the 5th grade. I don't remember for sure.
Who was your favorite teacher?
Well, you know, I was just a little girl. I don't think I ever really had a favorite teacher, but I can name one of my teachers, and that was Miss Brooks. I don't know her Ruth Brooks. That was her name, Ruth Brooks. Mm-hmm. She was my English teacher, and then I had a arithmetic or math teacher, and his last name was Wilson, and I can't remember his first name, but he was another one of my favorite teachers. So I tried to like them all.
Yes. Now, did you live on a farm? No. No.
We lived on a farm at Pittsburgh at McAllister, but we moved supposedly on a farm when we moved to Salina, but it was rocky and everything, and my dad, and then the Depression, you know, hit. And during the Depression, my daddy sold his farm equipment just one piece at a time till he didn't have any farm equipment. He had a team of horses that was as big as almost as the Clydesdale horses. They had big old hoofs like the Clydesdale did. And of course he had to sell them. And then my daddy went to work for the WPA, if you know what that is. And he helped build the Spavinaw Dam at Spavinaw. And then, well, he helped build bridges and just whatever the WPA was doing, you know. Mm-hmm. And then kind of when the WPA quit, I don't remember, he was just limbo.
Yes.
And him and another man from Salina went to hunt work, and they hopped a freight train. and they were way out, I don't know, Utah or somewhere, and they was hopping this freight train, and the man that was with him made it when he tried to get on the train, and my daddy missed it, and he rolled down a hill, and he was so sore he couldn't get up out of that hill. He lay down there below that hill. And you know, we didn't have telephones then. Mm-hmm. But this man come back to Salina, and he said, me and George was hopping this freight train, and I made it, and he didn't. And he said, I don't know if he was run over or not. You know, said, I don't know what happened to him. Well, the police in Salina, they called out to this, wherever it was at, and to see if they had any record of him being killed by a freight train, or, you know, or if he's still alive and where he was at. And because, you know, we didn't have telephones, well, the police did, but we didn't. But anyhow, I remember what a terrible time this was when we was waiting to get the message that he was all right or he wasn't all right. And finally one day we got a letter from him. And I never will forget that day. My grandma, my daddy's mother, she just shouted, and she says, praise the Lord, he's alive, he's alive. And we all cried. And it was just wonderful. And one day he showed up, he got home. And then he worked at an ice house in Pryor. I don't know if you know what an ice house is, because everybody had to have an ice box then. And there would be icemen come around your house and want to know if you need any ice today, and we'd buy ice from them.
Did you have the thing you put in the window, how many pounds you needed? They had a card in the window.
Well, now that's, see, I don't know that.
Okay.
But anyhow, that's...
I'd like to ask, when you were a little girl, what chores did you do around the house?
Oh my gosh. You know, I didn't do very many chores. We didn't have a lot of chores to do. I can't remember. I could remember milking the cow. We had a cow that really gave a lot of milk. And my sister, you know, you just milk a cow on one side. But my sister milked it on one side, and I milked it on the other side. And the pasture that he was in, where we had to go to the pasture where he was at and milk him. And it was right next to Highway 20. And as the cars were going by, they saw me and Georgie out there milking that cow on both sides. And they were startled, and they sometimes would stop and look at us milking that cow. That's one chore I can remember, but we just didn't. I may gather the eggs. I may have fed the chickens. I just don't really remember.
Did you help your mother with laundry?
Help her with the laundry? Mm-hmm. You better believe.
What'd you do?
Rub board. And you had, there was 3, 4, 5. There were 6 of us kids at home at one time. My 3 older sisters was gone from home and married before I ever started school. And anyhow, there was a lot of kids at home for what was to cook. And she cooked on a wood stove. We didn't have a bathroom. you brushed your teeth and spit in the washpan, if you know what the washpan was, and then you threw the water out in, you know, in the yard, or in.
Now, who cut the wood for the stove?
Who what?
Who cut the wood for the stove for your mother?
We did.
You did?
I went to the woods many a time and sawed down the tree and cut the wood.
How big is the wood for the stove?
About like this.
About 6, 8 inches long?
Probably.
Okay. Now, did your mother boil the clothes outside in a tub?
She had a now see, I knew it before you asked me. She had well, it was a great big round arm thing that we built a fire in under.
Yes.
And we put water in that. And then we put the white clothes in there, and that is supposed to make them white. In that hot water, oh golly, I wished I could think of that name of that, but maybe it'll come to me.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, we had neighbors said they just loved to see the wash day with all of us kids, me and my other 2 sisters, and the other kids just run around playing out there, rubbing on the rub board, washing them clothes. And we'd have a pile of anklets that big, because we all had to wear anklets or socks.
What day was wash day?
Oh, I don't know, probably Monday.
Monday, okay.
But I don't remember actually the day.
Because my grandmother told me Monday was wash day and nobody burned on Monday because it was wash day.
Well, that may have been our wash day, I don't know. But anyhow, we done the washing on a rub board, and we, what was I going to say? And we hung the clothes out on a clothesline, and then we gathered them in, and of course this is past whatever you need to know, I think. But
did you help with the ironing?
Oh yes, and my grandmother, that was one thing she done. She helped iron. She never she lived with my mother before I was ever born. When my grandpa died in 25, she moved in with Mom and Daddy, and all of my life she lived with them, and I think she lived with them till she died. Of course, she had to go to a nursing home the last few years.
Did your mother make starch?
Yes, we made starch, and we'd have to thin it. It was too thick.
How do you make starch?
Huh?
How do you make starch?
We had you bought a box of starch and you mixed it with hot water, and it was real thick, and then you thinned it and put it, or put it in your water, whatever, how you was going to starch them. But we starched everything. This is funny. Me and my sister starched Grandma's drawers one time. That was meaning us doing that, but we did.
I'd like to ask, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Do you remember that day?
I don't know if I remember that day. We didn't have TVs and no way of getting news except by newspaper. So actually, I don't remember that. We was too poor to take the paper, but there was a neighbor that took the paper that let us have it. And that's the only way we got news. We had a radio, but it was so staticky and everything, it was hard to hear what they were saying. And We didn't get a TV when they finally came along. We didn't get one.
Where were you living at this time, 1941?
I was living in Salina.
In Salina.
I lived in Salina from 4th grade till time I went to Seattle.
Okay. I'd like to ask, after the war started, did you help with the scrap metal drives or rubber drives?
You know, in Pryor, you may not know it, but they had a powder plant, and they also made gunpowder. And when I got out of school, high school, I applied for a job at the powder plant, and they hired me. Well, I got to work 3 months, and they fired me. You had to be 18, and I wasn't 18. I lied about my age and said I was 18, and that's how they hired me. When they got got caught up hiring people, they checked my records and found out I wasn't 18, so they fired me.
What did you do at the powder plant?
Well, there were buckets full of little bitty powders, kind of like a macaroni, you know, and we fed that like these 4 fingers. You had this bucket, and you got it out of the bucket, and you fed it in that machine. And I remember how sleepy I got. Well, I had to work graveyard shift, and I could just almost fall asleep singing, putting that powder in there. And I went to we got to get a 15-minute break, and I went to the warehouse, that's what we call it, where we went to get our break, and there was a Indian woman in there, and I said, "Do you ever get sleepy on graveyard?" And she said, "No, I just give it to me no-do." I always thought that was funny. We would say, "I took a pill." She said, "I just give it to me." I thought that was funny.
How did rationing affect you and the family? How did rationing?
They done like everybody else, done the best they could. I can remember the grocery store that we shopped at in Salina. Cigarettes, my daddy smoked, and cigarettes were limited. And when he got in a supply of cigarettes, he always put a carton back for my daddy. But then when my daddy didn't have those, he rolled his own. Prince Albert, he rolled his own cigarettes. So.
Now, sugar was rationed, meat was rationed. Did this affect you?
It didn't affect me. You know, I was just a young girl, and I was just taking whatever come along, you know. I'm sure it affected Mama, but it didn't affect me because she was still getting to fix us. We ate a lot of brown beans and cornbread. We had our cow, so we had milk and butter. Mama ordered every spring, she ordered from Montgomery Ward chickens. And I remember when those chickens come, I don't know how many, well, I'll say 45 or 50, a whole bunch of them. And we put them in a box by the wood stove in the house to keep them warm, you know. And we raised those chickens until they got big enough that we could kill them and eat them. And we kept the pullets and we ate the roosters. And I guess we just needed one rooster. And we raised those pullets and we ate them whenever we wanted to. And like I said, we had milk and butter. And I don't know how Mother done it, but she managed to get a pig or a hog every fall, and I don't know who she had to kill it. But some of the neighbors, you know, they got together and they killed them and helped dress them and all of that stuff.
Did you make cracklings? Did you make cracklings?
Cracklings, oh yeah, yeah.
How do you make cracklings?
You know, I didn't make them. I ate them. So actually, I really don't know how they did make them.
Okay.
But I know we liked them.
In
But we liked anything we could get that was edible.
in school, did you follow the progress of the war?
No, because see, 41, and I graduated in 44, I followed it as much as I could. We had no communication, you know, anyway from anybody to, and I thought there was a lot of men, married men that had children. All the men just about had to go to war. And I can remember how we had a doctor in Salina that was family doctor for everybody in Salina. And he had a son, and I remember he got killed in the war. And that broke all of us, his heart. And one of my friends, he went AWOL, and he hid out in the woods out east of Salina, maybe close to Kenwood, I don't know. But he hid out, and they found him one day, and he had to go back. So he went back, and then he got killed. And that, you know, it affected all of us in Salina when all of this news. And Howard had a brother that, I don't know how he got on that island, but he was stranded on the island. And they just flew over and they dropped their supplies to him or dropped their mail or all of that. And then when they wanted to pick all of that up, they'd fly over and they'd come along with a hook and hook their mail bag up. That's how they got.
Yeah.
And he was so, when he got discharged after the war, he was just like, you see some of those men over there that, well, just like they're starved to death, you know, and he was just poor as a snake. And then,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then when the Korean conflict came out, as soon as he got home, he started the college at OU to be an engineer. And then he knew he was going to get drafted, and he signed up at the war. And he went to New York for his basic and came back. They sent him back to California, and he had a car wreck that died.
Yeah. Now you graduated in 1944.
I was in 44.
What'd you do after high school?
I just told you I got to go to work at that powder plant.
When you got fired, what'd you do?
Not much of anything until I went to Seattle.
Okay. When did you go to Seattle?
Huh?
When did you go to Seattle?
In 40, you know, I graduated in May. And so this was probably 2 or 3 months after I'd graduated. Well, I worked 3 months, and then I didn't have a job. And my sister and her family was going to Seattle to work at Boeing aircraft, and I went with them.
How'd you travel to Seattle?
Well, my brother-in-law had a car, and I never will forget, I cried all the way to Seattle. My daddy didn't want me to go, And I went, Mother wanted me to go, and I went anyhow, and I cried all the way to Seattle. And I cried many a tear because my daddy didn't want me to go, you know, and I went anyhow. So that's kind of, you know, when you go against your family, your mom and your daddy, that's hurtful, or it is for me.
What'd you do in Seattle?
I went, as soon as I got there, I applied at Boeing Aircraft, and they hired me.
Did you have to go through a background check or a security check?
You know, I don't know. We probably did.
Okay.
When I applied for a job at the Boeing Aircraft, they hired all the men before they hired women to go to work out there. And guess what? I got called up with the men. You know, Willie Coats, they thought I was a man. But I went ahead and went anyhow.
What'd you do at Boeing?
I worked on the B-29s, and I worked in the wing line assembly. Because I was little, I could crawl it back in there. And now, as far as Rosie the Riveter, I don't know if I've riveted or if I bolted. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you that.
Now, I'd like to ask, did you have to have training before you went to work?
They just put me to work and trained me to work, I think. I didn't.
So you just trained on the job then?
I didn't have any special training that I know of.
Okay.
I'm sure they had to teach me what to do and everything, but and I can remember laying down in that wing because I was in the wing because I was small, and I could crawl in there. Mm-hmm. And I can remember getting in there, crawling in there, and laying down. But anyhow, and my people that worked there when I was working there, we finished one B-29, mm-hmm. and we rolled out that finished B-29, and they had all of us in front of it. And I've got that picture somewhere, and we all had to wear head covers. We couldn't have. Well, I don't know if I can do this or not. Well, I'm not, this is not very big, but I'll try. Anyhow, we brought it around and we tied it up here in front, and this hand is numb, so I don't know if I can't tie it. You tied it up here, mm-hmm. and everything went like that.
Why'd you have to do that?
Why did we have to do that? You know, you could ask one of the managers.
No.
Somebody in charge, but because, you know, I'm just a young girl from the country. And I just done what they told me to do.
Okay.
And the best I could do.
Now, when you're inside the wing, what are you doing?
I'm either bolting or riveting.
Okay, how do you rivet? Or how do you bolt?
Well, you had the bolts in a little container, mm-hmm. and you took these bolts and put them wherever they needed to go, and
now.
But now I don't know if I riveted or if I bolted, but I know I bolted some, mm-hmm. and I may have riveted.
Now, what is bolting? What do you do when you
bolt? You know, nuts and bolts.
Oh yes, okay.
You put the bolt in, and then you put the nut on the bolt.
Now, is there someone on the outside when you're on the inside?
I don't know.
Okay.
I tell you, I really don't.
How do you rivet?
You have a rivet gun
Mm-hmm.
that you rivet with.
Now, are you on the inside or outside when you're riveting?
Inside, I don't remember working any outside.
Okay, okay.
All of it was inside. I was inside that wing. I had to go up a ladder and then crawl in there.
Mm-hmm. Now,
To the best of my knowledge.
now you drill the hole for the rivet, and you put the rivet in.
The hole may already be there time I got to it.
Okay.
Now, that's my theory. You know how many years ago that's been? I don't know if I can remember everything I need to tell you or not, but
Who was your supervisor?
well, now
Who was your
what?
supervisor at Boeing?
Who was my supervisor? Him. You know, that's it. I don't know. It could just. I don't have any idea.
Now, what hours did you work at Boeing?
I worked 8 to 5.
8 to 5.
Yeah.
When did you live in Seattle?
I didn't live in Seattle. The plant was in Renton,
Okay.
Washington was where the plant was. And I lived in Renton. I lived with my sister and her family for a long time. And then I got a girlfriend that I got acquainted with. And me and her rented. They had a housing development that the houses weren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
They were built for just workers from Boeing that they could live in one of these houses. And me and her rented one of these houses.
Describe that house.
Oh my gosh. Did you ever see a WPA house? Well, it wasn't something that I would have built or you would have built. It was just shaggy little old houses in this development that people that worked at Boeing could live in.
Okay. How far from Boeing, the plant, was that house?
You know, I would say 2 or 3 miles at least.
How'd you get to work?
I think they had a bus that took us.
What's your most vivid memory of working at Boeing?
Now what?
What's your most vivid memory of working at Boeing?
Seeing the airplane as we drove in to work at it. And maybe crawling in that wing. You know, I don't know. But anyhow.
Did people with bond drives come to the plant to sell war bonds?
They probably may come around and want us to, you know.
Did you buy war bonds?
No, I didn't buy nothing. I done good to feed and get something over my head.
What was the rent at that house? How much rent do you have to
Now,
pay?
I don't have any idea.
Okay.
You remember, you know how long ago? They may have took it out of our paycheck. I don't know that either. And I don't even remember what my paychecks were, but I know I didn't save it. I didn't save a lot of money. I remember I saved $50 one time, and I mailed it back to Salina to my church. And I have thought about that many a time. Why didn't you send that to your mom instead of the church? Because my mom could have used that $50 a lot. But
I'd like to ask, on your off time when you weren't working, what did you do?
You know, I don't know, I think we went to a little grocery store and maybe picked up stuff that we needed.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember walking home with a couple of my friends out there going home from the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how far that was that we walked. But anyhow.
Did you go to the movies?
Not a lot. I didn't have a lot of money. I just, you know, I don't know if they paid average pay or I don't know what my paychecks were, but evidently they weren't a lot because I didn't save any money.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the war ended, the plant shut down. So here I am, no job.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother-in-law was, I guess you'd call him a logger. Him and my sister would go up in the mountains and they'd saw down a tree and then they'd saw the limbs off of it and got the log where it was just a log.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to work for him. And me and my sister would saw the trees down. And I helped saw the limbs off on the side. And when we got it where it was just smooth, I had to take a log chain and I had to put it on that tree. And it rained and rained and rained out there. And my gloves were just, the ground was soggy and my gloves were soggy. And I can remember digging around in the dirt and trying to get that log chain around that log. And I had a horse. And when I got that log chain on there, I said, get up. And he knew what to do. And he pulled that log out in well, I don't know what you would call it, kind of a trench,
Mm-hmm.
Where that log would fit in there. And then I had to hook him and the log together for him to take it down the mountain. And he took it down the mountain, and I can remember the log hitting him in the back of the leg, because it was a sliding down that mountain and it hitting that poor little horse in the legs. But he knew where to go, and when he got down the mountain, he turned and there was a place right here where I unhooked the log and told him to get up, and he pulled the log out and got on. And then I had to take, now I don't know if you know what a PV is.
PV.
It's got a long handle like an axe, and on the end it's got a hook that you took that PV and you hooked that log and fell off down below here where the road is. And then the truck came and picked it up and took it to Sawmill.
Okay. What was the name of your horse?
What?
What was the name of your horse?
I don't know. I really don't.
What saw were you using to cut the tree?
What saw?
What saw?
To cut down? A crosscut saw.
Cross saw. You were.
Yeah. I was sawing that log down.
And what saw did you use to cut the limbs off?
We had I think a chainsaw that we cut off the big ones, and the little ones we had just kind of like an axe. I mean, an axe that we just cut it off, to get it ready.
When you were cutting those trees, how high up did you cut the tree from the ground?
From the ground? Well, not any higher than I could reach to do the.
Okay.
to do the chainsaw.
I'd like to back up. Tell me about VJ Day, the day the war ended.
All I can remember was how happy we were. And I think we cried. We were so happy that the war had ended. And I've got a newspaper in my stuff that's at Kindle's somewhere that I bought, a Seattle newspaper, in great big letters across the top. It had peace, P-E-A-C-E. And I've saved that newspaper all these years.
When did you start working for Boeing?
Well, right after I got out there in 44.
44, okay.
Yeah.
And you worked until the war ended in August of
45.
45.
And then when I come home, the war was still affected. The people traveling, see, I was going to have to ride a bus back to Pryor, Oklahoma, and people were traveling, and it was, well, it was a mess. And I don't remember where we was at. I think somewhere in Colorado that I had to change buses, and the bus that I was going to catch was already loaded. I couldn't get on it. And here I am at this bus station. What can I do? I didn't know. I said, I guess I'll just sit here in the bus station all night long, because I couldn't get out till the next day. But there's a little old lady there, and her grandson, so big, and she saw me and she said, honey, could I help you? And I said, well, you sure can. And she said, well, me and, she called his name, my grandson, she said, I'm just as scared as you are. And she said, we're going to have to rent a motel or a room. I don't know. But anyhow, she rented a room somewhere, and she said, you can stay with us. And I didn't know this woman from Adam, but I was tickled. She was so kind to me. And I went with her and that little boy and stayed all night in that room. Then I came to Tulsa. And when I got to Tulsa, I had to get a room. And I remember just down from the street, from the bus station, there's a great big hotel. So I had my suitcase and I walked down there to that hotel and got a room. And I don't know if I should tell this or not, but there was just a man that took me up to my room. And I stayed out in the hall before I went in. I wasn't going to go in that room with that man. And he carried my suitcase in. And you don't know, you don't know if I don't know, if I had sense enough to tip him or not. I may not. But anyhow, then the next day I got a bus and went to Pryor. Well, when I got to Pryor, I had to get home. 9 miles. And so I rented a taxi. And I was just, I don't know, so happy to be getting home. And I told that taxi driver, I'm not going to let you take me in front of my house, because I know I'm going to throw a fit. And so he let me out a block before he got to my house, and I walked down there, and I walked up on the porch, and I looked in the house. Back then we had a window in the door, and I looked in the house, and there sat my baby brother at the table. He's either coloring or something, and I went in a screaming. I was so, you know, if you've never been homesick, you don't know what it's like. It just, it hurts. And I was so homesick and so glad to be home that I just let loose. But anyhow, now let me tell you about my husband. He was in the war 33 months. He was at sea 30 months. On the water 30 months. And
What's his name?
Howard. And he got a 10-day leave when he first went in, and before they shipped him out, and he got to come home on that 10-day leave. And there was another boy that was on leave, and this bunch of us kids was downtown, sitting on the car or on the sidewalk or whatever, and just, you know how a bunch of kids do when they get together. We were just down there. And Howard asked me that night, he said, if I write to you when I go back, will you write to me? And I said, sure. So he wrote to me. I wrote to him 30 months. I'd never had a date with him because when he was at home and I was at home, I was just a little snot-nosed girl to him, you know. He dated, when he was a freshman, he dated the sophomores and the juniors, and when he was a sophomore, the juniors and seniors. He was a really good-looking man, and he was a good dancer, and everybody wanted to date him. So, anyhow, when he was coming home after I wrote to him 30 months, he wrote and asked me if I'd have a date with him when he got home. And I wrote him back and I said, yes, I will, but I said, I can remember when you was home, you wouldn't have dated me at all. So anyhow, he got home one night and he was at my house next morning, like by 9 o'clock, and we walked down to downtown to the post office and got the mail. I went with him and his mother and sister to see his brother and family in Pryor. Rest is history. 68 years we were married. And wonderful husband, wonderful husband. And we were married 20 years when along came Kendall. And I just have praised the Lord for him ever since I've had him. I'm so blessed to have a child after.
Yes.
And he is the best. And I know theirs is the best, but he was the best for me and Howard. And we spoiled him to death, but the doctor said, that's not spoiling him, that's just loving him.
Yeah. Would you show me this again?
I may have to have you to do this. Anyhow, that was in front. And this came around and went up here and tied.
Okay.
And that part we tucked under
Okay.
when we got it up here. And I can't tie it. I would if I could.
Yeah.
But this hand won't let me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
what are you doing nowadays?
huh?
What are you doing nowadays?
What am I doing nowadays?
Yeah.
I'm living in a independent living home, and you get your food, you get your room, you get your room cleaned, you get your sheets changed every week. They supposedly clean your room, but with a feather duster. I don't call that cleaning.
Anybody have any questions?
But now she's one of the bosses at Murata, at where I live, and she is wonderful. She works in the kitchen, she serves the people, she does anything there is to do. She's a running and she's a doing it. She just works, she just does everything.
Okay.
Willie, are you the last?
What?
Are you the last riveter that we know of, or do you know
Am I the last one?
Rosie the Riveter?
No, I don't know. I'm sure there's not this time, and at my age, there's probably not a lot of Rosie the Riveters left. I don't have any idea how many.
I was just curious.
A B-29 landed in Tulsa just recently, and Kendall took me to see this B-29, and he put this walker in the back of his pickup and got it, and he had it there, so I got to ride it all the way around that B-29. The pilot was inside showing people. There was a long line. People paid $40 to get in and see the inside of that B-29. And I was so thankful that I got to go, and I was so proud that Kendall took this so I could ride it all the way around that B-29. That was a wonderful experience, I thought. And he got good pictures of me and the B-29.
I have copies of those.
And
No questions?
How long was your Rosie the Riveter?
huh?
How long was your Rosie the Riveter?
I'm still a Rosie the Riveter.
Oh, that's what I want to hear.
You see that picture of her?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still. Once a Rosie the Riveter, you're always a Rosie the Riveter.
Now,
Because you got that name when you worked on the B-29.
Ooh.
anything else you want to talk about?
And now what?
Anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about how wonderful I think my company, where I live here, how gracious they are. Even Iva Joe taking off work and coming up here and listening. I'm thankful for them. We're going to have lunch here. I called at 8 o'clock, and they're going to have a table reserved for my people. And I said I didn't know if you wanted to go or not, but I've got 7 or 8 that's going, and that may be about all they can do. I mean, that's.
Well, I brought another one, so we will.
That's quite a chore for them
Yeah.
to reserve a place for all of us to come. And I'm thankful that what part of my family came. Out of 10 in my family, I'm the only one left. And I was the 6th girl. There were 7 girls and 3 boys. And oh my, God is so good to be here, and I'm never sick. Knock on wood. I'm never sick, and I'm so thankful for that. And I got a problem with my eye that's got a scar on it that I probably won't never see good out of it. I may get if I put my hand on this eye, you're just a blur sitting there. Your head's not even, I can see your clothes, but your head's not normal.
Okay. Well, ma'am, this is an excellent interview.
Huh?
This is an excellent interview.
Oh, well,
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
well, as my nieces, my niece and her son and her husband, and it's this niece and her son. That's the way it goes. And where did Glenda go? Did she leave? Oh, and Glenda. So I'm thankful that but you know, my nieces are just like daughters that I never did have. And they are so good to me. And they come to see me. And isn't that wonderful? You know, nieces, they didn't have to do that, but they do. They just love me to death, and I love them to death. And I'm thankful for them, and I'm thankful for a good place to live at, that I have this place. And this is my home, and it'll be my home till they carry me out.
Okay. Well, again, this is November 22nd, 2024. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Willie Gene Coats in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Well, I thank you.